nous voulons par la même occasion attirer l'attention de l'opinion tant nationale qu'internationale et la communauté internationale.
Well, the much anticipated negotiations and a historic breakthrough in solving the conflict in eastern DRC flopped at the 11th hour. In just the past 24 hours alone, major diplomatic shifts and decisions were made that affected the negotiations between the M23 and the Kinshasa government. In this video, I'm going to discuss what happened in the past 24 hours between the M23, the Kinshasa government, and the Rwandan government that led to the cancellation of this historic meeting between the M23 and the Kinshasa government. Well, this is Bonafide. If you haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe and hit that notification button so that when I release something new on the DRC crisis, you get notified as soon as possible. Well, it is now evident and it is out in public that the M23 announced that it will no longer participate in the direct negotiations with the Kinshasa government in Rwanda. This was a much anticipated negotiations because it was a first, because Kinshasa has been insisting that it needs to have negotiations or talks with the Rwandan government, but the Rwandan government and the president of Rwanda has been saying that Rwanda is not directly involved in what is happening in eastern DRC, that the Kinshasa government should have negotiations with the M23. And just recently, the Kinshasa government agreed that there should be a negotiation with the M23 directly, and that flopped just at the 11th hour, as today was supposed to be the day that the Kinshasa government will have that negotiations with the M23. It is important to point that the Kinshasa government has said that it will continue with these negotiations, even though the M23, which is the other party, has said that it will not take part in these negotiations in Rwanda. And well, up to Monday evening, all signs pointed to the direction that indeed these talks were to happen. Even the M23 released a communique pointing to the direction that they will send 5 people as representatives in Rwanda so that they can partake in these direct negotiations with Kinshasa. But something happened, or a string of events happened, that made the M23 to rescind its decision from partaking in these negotiations. Well, several countries have been condemning Rwanda of supporting the M23 and purporting that Rwanda has some of its troops in eastern DRC assisting the M23 in fighting against the Congolese government. And many countries have been coming out, Canada, the UK and other countries have been coming out to condemn Rwanda, and even the United States sanctioned some of the Rwandan officials as well as M23 high-ranking officials. But yesterday, on the 17th of March 2025, these condemnations took a different turn, or went a notch higher, when the European Union decided to sanction some high-ranking members of the M23 as well as the Rwandan Defense Forces high-ranking military officials. Well, these sanctions just ahead of the peace talks have been met with strong opposition from the rebel group. Lawrence Kanyuka, the spokesperson of the M23, accused international organizations of deliberately sabotaging the peace efforts. And that was just on the part of the M23. The rescinding of the decision to take part in this negotiation was a way of the M23 saying that these sanctions are not supposed to come on the eve of the negotiations. Well, Rwanda, because it was also affected by these sanctions by the European Union, as top members of the military were also sanctioned, also retaliated in a different form. Well, Rwanda ordered Belgium diplomats to leave within 48 hours, citing Belgium lies and manipulation in the regional conflict. But why Belgium? Well, according to Rwanda, Belgium is implicated in undermining Kigali in terms of making other countries in the European Union to impose sanctions and condemnations on Kigali. Well, and Belgium did not take long to respond, because Belgian Foreign Minister Maxime Prévost called the Rwandan decision more disproportionate and refused to engage in dialogue. Brussels declared Rwandan diplomats persona non grata. Well, the withdrawal is a huge setback to the diplomatic efforts that were being put forward to solve the situation in eastern DRC. As we stand right now, the M23 is still fighting with the FARDC in different fronts in North Kivu and South Kivu, and now they have that push to extend this further to Katanga and also going further to Kinshasa. That has been the point that the M23 has been making, and the fact that the efforts towards these negotiations have now been broken, it means that this issue will be complicated even further. The M23 argues that as it had agreed to partake in these negotiations, the parties that are not directly involved in these negotiations should not have interfered in any way. Therefore, it meant that the European Union should not have imposed those sanctions right at that moment before the talks happened. It also points to the direction that the M23 has that general mistrust with the Congolese government. It sees these talks as part of the Congolese government to win over the territories, to win over the entire dialogue of the eastern DRC conflict. And as a result of this diplomatic chaos that is taking place in eastern DRC and neighboring countries, the relationship between Rwanda and Belgium has now been severed. And further, the negotiations between the M23 and the Kinshasa government was supposed to take place, if at all, the two parties will meet in Luanda. Right now, with only one party agreeing to these negotiations, it means that these efforts will not bear any fruit. And at the end of the day, the people who suffer the most are the civilians who are caught in the crossfire between the M23, other militia, and the FARDC, the Congolese government, and other militia. These are the people who feel the heavy burden of the lack of the negotiations between these two warring parties. And it is safe to say that the prospects of the entire conflict in eastern DRC coming to an end right now appears dim.